and possibly harmful. And the dual sides are leaving law enforcement with a real dilemma. Perception, because it's bad encounters that many people in minority communities say they see all too often. So to talk about this, I want to bring in our guests, retired FBI Special Agent James Gagliano and retired LAPD Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Thank you so much for being with us. Cheryl, I want to get your take here as we saw this contrast. Is this just a case of there are a few bad eggs when it comes to this organization as a whole of policing?
Well, of course. I mean, I spent 20 years of my life there, and so I certainly saw more of the second version of police officers during my 20-year tenure. But listen, we have to admit and acknowledge that there are some officers who are ill-suited and don't have the right temperament to be police officers. That first incident at the Waffle House was not about complying. It was not about gaining control. It was about punishment. It was about, you're not doing what I'm telling you to do, and so now there's a price to pay. Thank God this young man didn't lose his life. And so unless and until there's substantive consequences for officers who misbehave and who use excessive force, and just terminating this guy or allowing him to have the gift of resignation and go on to another police department maybe is insufficient. There needs to be some personal financial liability on the part of officers who behave inappropriately, and this was clearly excessive and unnecessary.
And in many of these cases, we have seen actually no action being taken against the officers, James, because they feel that their lives are in danger, they say, in some of these cases. They also say, well, listen, this person is resisting arrest. I do what I have to do to make sure that this person is neutralized, they say. I mean, is that protocol? Is that what police officers are trained to do in handling a situation like we're seeing at the Waffle House?
Sure, and Lynn, I spent 25 years working in inner city communities in upstate New York and in New York City. I agree with my colleague here. There is a thing called the use of force continuum, and officers and agents, federal agents, are taught how to apply use of force. So you're never supposed to use more force than is just necessary to bring somebody into custody. So let's establish right there that this clearly appears to be, from what we've seen, a case of excessive force. But we also have to couple that with the fact that we're living in different times right now. And the different times we're living in means that people are being taught, or they're just being accustomed to, not complying with police officers' requests. I can tell you from experience that the worst thing that a police officer wants to respond to is a restaurant or a neighborhood that calls in and says, hey, we've got a rowdy customer, or we've got somebody that's not leaving when they're supposed to. Can officers respond? That is an officer's nightmare. You're hoping that by the time you get there, the person is gone, because today people just do not want to walk away from these situations, and it makes it very difficult. That does not in any way condone excessive force, and with what I've seen in this video, I agree with my colleague. I think this was a case of excessive force.
So, Cheryl, is part of the problem that police officers are being able to determine themselves how much force is needed considering the circumstances?
Well, the problem is that there's no accountability. And so we understand that great deference is given to what a police officer says, and if they say they're in fear for their life, by and large, people want to believe that. But there was no reason for this officer to be fearful. I mean, you could compare and contrast the size of the officer to this young man. For starters, this was punishment. This was, you're not complying with me, and I encourage everyone to comply, because you never know which officer you're encountering. You don't know if it's a Darren Wilson or Anthony Pantaleo who's gonna choke you to death because you don't comply. People not complying and being belligerent is inherent to police work. I don't get to punish you because you don't shut up, because you don't come here, because you don't turn around. We're taught and trained. We're the professionals, and you are not taught to punish someone because of their failure to comply.
Cheryl and James, I know this is such a larger conversation, but as we saw with that police officer that saved the little baby's life, there are heroes out there. Both of you have given your careers to this profession and done great things with it. So maybe it's communicating to the communities that there are people like all of you out there as well. Thanks so much for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.